As I might have mentioned before, we're going to be building the newest version of the Android Messenger application. Now, the reason I think this is a good app to build is that it requires a lot of dynamic information. It requires users to log in and to use your app, and it requires persistent storage of data and information. And so building a chat messenger app is pretty, let's say, relevant to almost any other application you could build. If you wanted to build a forum, a chat forum, this would probably be a good model to build off of. If you wanted to have users log into your app and save information about them in almost any way, this is probably a good way to learn how to do that. And so we're going to be building out Google's new version of the Android Messenger for the desktop or for the web. But we're going to do it using the Materialize CSS library because it'll be easier for us and we won't have to write as much CSS. You guys cool with that? And so I think the first thing we should do is we should just build the layout of this page, just what it looks like as much as possible. So when we start adding the data and information, it'll be relatively easy. And so actually the first thing we want to do is you want to head to Cloud9, to c9.io, head to your dashboard, and go ahead and create a new workspace. You don't have to create a new workspace if you don't want to, but I usually like to start clean for projects like this. And so I'm going to create a new workspace here, and we're going to call that workspace Android Messenger app, just like this. And you can make yours public, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to do it in HTML5. And so if you do those things and you click Create Workspace, it should take a second and it should just load up a workspace for you. I'm going to pause this video, and once this is done, I'll pull it back up again. No, we're not going to need to use anything else besides just Cloud9 for the time being. Now, when you load up a new workspace, start you up with a README and some files. I'm actually going to get rid of all of that. So I'm going to just right-click or control-click or alt-click and then delete both of these files because we're not going to need them. And I'm going to reshape this a little bit just so I can see a little nicer, and I'm going to exit out of the README. So once you're here, we start fresh with an entirely new project. The first thing I want to do is I want to make a new directory to put all of my code inside. So I'm going to type in mkdir Android-Messenger-app.
What's in this C9 folder?
This C9 folder right here is only there because I enabled showing hidden files. If you get rid of that, it should work. Now the funny thing is I probably shouldn't have done that since this is also called Android Messenger app, and that's kind of silly to have two folders called Android Messenger app, so maybe I'll actually not do that. I'm going to delete this and just call it front end, like this. Oh, sorry, mkdir front end, excuse me. Because this is going to be the front end of my application, the part that everyone sees. And technically, we're not going to need to have a back-end part because that's all going to be in Firebase, but it is usually nice convention to store things in a front-end or back-end folder. Now I'm going to CD into my front-end folder, and I'm going to touch a few files that we're going to use here. I'm going to touch an index.html, a style.css, and a firebase.js. Those are the three files we're going to need to use the most frequently, so I think this makes a lot of sense. Everybody cool with that so far? Now, if you touch all three of those files, they should appear right here. And we're going to start writing some code right away in the index.html section. So if you pop open the index.html section like so, it should look like this. And we're going to get some generic boilerplate out of the way as quickly as possible, because this will make our lives a little easier. So I'm going to speed through this really quickly. I'll send you out some code on Slack as soon as I get it done. So if you don't have to type along with me here if you don't want to, because this part's going to be a little tedious. Cool? As always, we're going to have a head for our file and a body. And I want to make sure I give this a title of Android Messenger app and a link for the style.css so that all of my styles are linked inside of my HTML page. And we're going to be mostly using Materialize to style all of our code. And if you don't know Materialize, Materialize is a CSS framework that's written in the original Google Material Design style. And so the way to get it is to go to materializecss.com. Now, I'm going to pause this really quickly and send you out this front-end code in a second. But before I do that, I want to make sure I get all of the links to the Materialize library as well. Is that cool with everybody? So the first thing you want to do is inside the Getting Started section. If you scroll down, you'll see that they give you the link to the compiled and minified CSS and the compiled and minified JavaScript. If you copy both of those and paste it into the head of your file, you can either do it before or after the style.css. I usually do it before because then I just want to make sure that if I write any code that, actually no, it's probably better to do it after, to be honest, so that if I write any CSS that I want it to overwrite some of the Materialize, and so I'll write it after the Materialize CSS library is already included right there. Now the other thing you're going to need is we're going to use some material icons, and so we should get those from the Materialize library as well, which if you go to Components and Icons, you'll see the code for that right there. And so I'm just going to copy all of this into the head of my file. And I'm actually going to set these spaces to 2, so this looks a little nicer. I just like spaces of 2. And that actually should do it for the very beginning of my setup. So this is all I have in there right now. I'm going to paste all this into Slack, but that should be pretty much all you need to get us set up. Now to make sure that this is working, I'm going to write some code in the style.css that just sets the background of the body to just say like gray. Which you can say gray with the hashtag EEEE, which just means gray. And so if you want to see what that looks like, if you preview the page, it should just look like this. It's a little gray. If you want to make it grayer, you could do like BBB, and that'll be a little grayer, or AAA, it'll be a little grayer, something like that, just to make sure it's working. And if you want to make sure it works a lot, just do like FF0000. Just make sure it's red. These are all colors designated by the hex codes right here, which we can talk about more in detail about how to get the exact colors you want. But just as a quick byproduct on why I'm doing that, if you type in hex code picker into Google, you'll see that it gives you all these different colors you can pick. And you can pick pretty much any color here, and it designates the hex code for what you need. That's usually a pretty good way to do it if you want to have an exact color. Because sometimes if you just type in yellow or black, you'll see how many different kinds of yellow there are right here. It's much easier to designate just a hex code, and that'll give you the exact color you need. Or using an RGB value like we talked about previously. So don't worry too much about all that. Yeah, sure. This is pretty much all you need for now. I'm going to actually open that into in a new tab. Oh, I already did. And I am going to Slack out all this code to you so that you are not lost. But yeah, here's everything that we have so far. You guys cool with that? Yes. Perfect.